mail bomb scare has now been arrested. And in moments, we're going to tell you what we know about this deranged individual. Plus, we are now on day 4 of what is the media's shameful attempt to connect President Trump, Fox News, talk radio, even me, to this deplorable actions of a madman. And coming up, we're going to take on these left-wing smear merchants. We'll call out their hypocrisy and respond to all of this outright slander. Now, once again, the left is trying to score cheap political points and a victory by vilifying all Trump supporters. It's beyond disgusting. And also tonight, we have a very important update on the migrant caravan, and we are only 11 days away till the all-important midterm elections. So stay tuned, buckle up. It's time for our breaking news opening monologue. All right, so today President Trump announced that the person allegedly responsible for the mail bomb scare is now, thankfully, in custody. Let's take a look.
I am pleased to inform you that law enforcement has apprehended the suspect and taken him into custody. It's an incredible job by law enforcement. We've carried out a far-reaching federal, state, and local investigation to find the person or persons responsible for these events. These terrorizing acts are despicable and have no place in our country. No place. I've instructed authorities to spare no resource or expense in finding those responsible and bringing them to swift and certain justice. We must never allow political violence to take root in America. Cannot let it happen. And I'm committed to doing everything in my power as president to stop it, and to stop it now.
Amen. And tonight, federal officials, they are continuing their important investigation, but thanks to their hard work, their dedication, their determination, here's what we know about this suspect. His name, Cesar Sayoc. Now, he's a middle-aged Florida resident with an extremely long criminal track record, including multiple counts of theft, drug charges, illicit steroid use, and much more. He was even charged with making a bomb threat back in 2002. And throughout his life, Sayoc has accumulated dozens of felony and misdemeanor charges. And he reportedly filed for bankruptcy in 2012 when he lived with his mother. Now, his van was covered with dozens of bizarre bumper stickers, including many that were derogatory, some threatening to Democrats. His multiple social media accounts were equally odd, very disturbing. And as you can see, this is the picture of an irrational man who is deeply, deeply troubled. And like the president said, we want anybody responsible for this heinous bomb scare to be held responsible to the fullest extent of the law. If Sayoc is found guilty, he should go to prison for an extremely long period of time. These actions are deplorable, inexcusable. There is no room for political violence in this country. We solve our problems, like in 11 days, at the ballot box. And as I've said many times, this is a very serious story. But over the course of this week, what we have seen, what we have witnessed in the mainstream media and the left has been downright disgraceful. Before ever even knowing who was responsible for this heinous act, the media started playing the blame game, rushing to judgment as usual. They put facts last. They rushed to judgment, and they did anything and everything possible to link President Trump and anyone who supports him to this act of terrorism. Even the graphics on fake news CNN blaming Trump, calling the would-be bomb victim, quote, Trump's targets. Trump's targets, believe it or not. The vitriol was far worse on air. Now, watch from just the past 24 hours. It should make your heart, well, sink.
But the list of targets was right out of Trump's relentless rhetorical playbook. The bomber's enemies were his enemies. He has said so again and again and again.
Everybody should stop pretending that Trump doesn't really know what he's doing. That when he says these things, he knows exactly what he's trying to encourage.
Donald Trump fails the country. He doesn't just fail Democrats. He fails Democrats and Republicans and all Americans in between.
He's refused to in any way acknowledge what role his rhetoric may have played in cultivating the current political climate.
This president has an obligation to stop picking on reporters.
The president has created a culture of comfort for violent rhetoric and actual violence.
He spends most of his time at his rallies throwing verbal bombs at all the people that receive these bombs in the mail.
And one fake news CNN political analyst even blaming yours truly for the bomb scare, especially as it relates to Robert De Niro. This is a disgrace. Watch this.
I just want to go back to that for a second, because everybody said, why Robert De Niro? He hasn't criticized the president since the Tony Awards in June. But you found that it's what happened, what Sean Hannity says had a direct link.
Well, may have. We don't know who it is. We don't know the motive. But what was fascinating is you see a direct pattern between the president's attacks on Twitter and the stage, it being echoed and amplified by Fox News and other folks in the conservagentia. But De Niro's not like the others, right? Why Robert De Niro? Well, one of the things I found is that October 15th, Sean Hannity was doing a whole segment blasting De Niro for things he said on the Alec Baldwin show, of all things, in which he said that Trump allies will regret it because they made a deal with the devil. So that all of a sudden becomes Robert De Niro's calling the president a devil and us devil worshippers in effect, you know? It's the playing the victim card, but it was top of mind 10 days ago. And it's interesting to see what is that when we find out who this is.
Now, John Avlon is both lying and he's ignorant and, frankly, recklessly irresponsible. Now, he is the walking embodiment of why so many Americans just don't trust the media, why they chant CNN sucks. Maybe you should actually watch a full episode of Hannity or listen to my radio show. Then he would actually see how I have been repeatedly calling on political vilification in this country to stop, especially the confrontations, how I deplore, disavow all incivility and acts of violence from the left and the right. By the way, if Avlon ever watched my show, listen to my radio show, he would know how much I value law and order and the safety of everyone, including people I disagree with passionately. For example, when President Obama's security was threatened in 2014, I spoke out over and over and over again how we need to protect our president, even though I had strong disagreements with him. Watch this. We have 3 incidents. We have the fence jumper, made it much further into the White House, even past the stairs going up to the residence, which is scary. We have the second incident in 2011, 6 shots fired at the White House, and took them 4 days to determine that they thought it had nothing related to do with the White House, which I disagree with. And then a guy with a gun got on an elevator with the president of the United States. Yeah. ISIS, our enemies are watching this. We got to protect our president. Every elected official, every cabinet member, every member of Congress, the Senate deserves security. Everyone deserves safety. And by the way, my heart goes out to anyone who's ever been threatened or harmed. Because you know what? I know firsthand how it feels. I've been through more than, frankly, I'm willing to make public, including white powder mailed to me, telling me it's anthrax. I had an assistant of mine scared to death, put in isolation for hours as a result of one incident. And I've had numerous other real threats in my career to both myself and my family. Lunatics, they have no political boundaries. And to suggest that honest, vigorous, hard-hitting debate and criticism is somehow the motivating force behind one fringe, violent individual is intellectually lazy, John Avlon, and frankly, just nothing but a cheap attempt to capitalize off a serious incident. You should be ashamed of yourself. And remember, I never blamed Bernie Sanders because one of his loyal supporters shot Republican lawmakers, nearly killed Steve Scalise on a baseball field last year. As a matter of fact, I said the opposite. Take a look. I'm not blaming Bernie Sanders.
No, of course
Bernie Sanders supporters.
No.
This was one nut. Remember the Bernie Sanders supporter? The one that targeted Republicans at baseball practice, leaving Congressman Steve Scalise fighting for his life? Well, was the media blaming Democrats for that? No. And by the way, they shouldn't have. And I don't blame Bernie either. I don't blame Bernie either. It would be irresponsible to tie him to what one nut supporter does. I've said many times, there are deranged individuals on both sides of the aisle, and they alone are responsible for their evil actions. And by the way, this brings us to our next point, the left's double standard. While the mainstream media now condemns what they see as destructive rhetoric from only the right, they may want to reflect inward first. Per usual, in just the past 24 hours alone, the anti-Trump vitriol from the mainstream destroy Trump media has been downright despicable, and we've got the tape. Take a look.
When you keep stirring that pot and you have leaders, the President of the United States, people listen to him. He's no longer on a talk show. He's the President of the United States. And this is whipping up people, and you will see people respond.
He was elected to be president of the United States, not, a mental patient.
This is just escalating, and it's only probably going to get worse if he doesn't change his tone.
Maybe they should be lecturing Maxine Waters and company. Create a crowd, follow them into grocery stores, department stores, gas stations. They're not wanted anywhere anymore. And what you just saw is nothing new, because the left's hatred of all things Trump has been boiling over since the day he and Melania came down the escalator. Here's just a small sampling of the insanity.
If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome.
You cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about.
Michelle says that, when they go low, we go high. No. When they go low, we kick them.
How dare he say the things he does? Of course I want to punch him in the face.
Right. I want to send the military to the White House to get him.
Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president? It's been a while. And maybe it's time.
Tyrants, number one, want to denigrate the people that go out, the fourth estate. The journalists who go out and try to determine what the truth is.
I want to read the definition of treason.
When do we see almost a shadow government come out and say, we cannot side with the government?
We're oddly influential with the guy who wants to kill us.
There's a sign out there that's been hung up in the White House or outside the White House saying, if you're not white, you're not especially welcome.
So you know what? Yeah, with rhetoric like that, it's kind of odd that they're now blaming Donald Trump and his allies for the actions of a lunatic, especially since multiple deranged far-left individuals have been what? We've been watching now for weeks, harassing, attacking, threatening Republicans all over the country. Just in recent weeks, we've been warning you, Rand Paul's been warning you, something horrible's going to happen. Doesn't matter if it's left or right, but the left's silence when it's their side has been deafening and worse. And some elected officials actually sent out marching orders to harass, intimidate cabinet officials, elected officials, and candidates. White powder mailed to the president, President Trump, Secretary of Defense Mattis, FBI Director Wray, CIA Director Haspel. That's just 3 weeks ago. President's son, who was also targeted with a suspicious package. Don Jr.'s ex-wife hospitalized because of that package. A truck with a Trump bumper sticker, that was set on fire. You have 2 Republican candidates in Minnesota were punched. One a woman, another a man with severe injuries. He's cold-cocked from behind. 6 weeks, bad concussion. A Republican campaign manager in Nevada, that he was assaulted. There were dozens more incidences of vandalism, assault, harassment, including top Republicans stalked in airports, run out of restaurants repeatedly. We've shown you this videotape. And while we constantly condemn acts of violence on both sides of the aisle, when something happens to a conservative, well, Democrats have been missing in action, noticeably silent. We're going to have a lot more on this throughout the show. But first, more big news on the looming crisis at our southern border tonight. The migrant caravan continues to move north even as we speak. Defense Secretary Mattis just approved a request to send even more troops to the border. Now at least 800 soldiers are officially being dispatched to bolster the efforts of our Border Patrol agents. President Trump recently told the migrants in the caravan, said it again tonight, turn back. And now he is reportedly mulling an executive order to bar entry of all migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border, which he has the authority to do. We're going to keep you posted as this situation continues to unfold. But first, we get back to our top story. Joining us now is Fox News national security strategist Dr. Sebastian Gorka and former NYC Police Commissioner Bernie Kerik. Welcome, both of you. By the way, congrats on your book, Why We Fight, a bestseller, Dr. Gorka. Bernie, from day one, you said they'd catch him. You thought between 48 and 72 hours you were dead on the mark. You even told me last night your gut was telling you, based on what you were witnessing, that it was imminent.
Right. Look, there was an enormous amount of evidence. The packaging, the devices that should have a trigger mechanism to explode upon opening, that didn't work. So when you take this, you take the technology that we have today and the unbelievable working ability of the Joint Terrorist Task Force, the FBI, the New York City PD, the other federal agencies, the New York State Police, you can't beat it. You can't beat it. They did a phenomenal, tremendous job.
You know, I want to, how did you, you know, the thing is, we're talking about 13 bombs here. So the big question to me is, and I'll ask you this, and then we'll talk about the politics with Dr. Gorka. 13 times, these bombs are designed, the minute you open it, they're supposed to explode. Now, we're told by FBI Director Wray that they had powder and shrapnel and glass and other shrapnel inside these bombs using PVC pipe, simply made. You can even see this garbage on the internet, sadly.
Right.
How is it none of them exploded? Just we're lucky, or he didn't know what he was doing, or maybe designed not to explode?
Sean, did you see the guy? Did you see his van? I mean, come on. I don't think this was an EOD expert. This is somebody that saw something in a magazine or wanted to create something that looked heinous, if you will. The bottom line is, I know EOD guys that work for me that looked at this stuff and burst out into laughter and said, it's never going to happen. The bottom line is, within the device itself, there may be material that could be explosive, which what the FBI director may be talking about. And keep in mind, Sean, for charging instruments in DOJ by a U.S. attorney, they want to make sure that there's the elements are there for a crime for them to charge this guy. So it's going to be a while before they make a determination exactly what they consisted of, their ability to detonate. But we're lucky. One, the guy he was a dud, and he had a bunch of duds that he sent out to the country.
Well, thank God, because thankfully nobody got hurt. Dr. Gorka, in the lead up to this, I've been saying it. Rand Paul said it. We saw it in the Kavanaugh hearings. Things were getting very hot in the halls of Congress. I actually suggested we may have to clear the halls of Congress, not let the public in. It was getting too hot. Then we have Pam Bondi. She's run out of a movie theater. Secretary Nielsen run out of a restaurant. Sarah Sanders and her kids run out of a restaurant. Then it gets worse and it continues. Ted Cruz and his wife. Then it's Mitch McConnell in the airport. Mitch McConnell last weekend. Boulders sent through Kevin McCarthy's office. The left's silence here was deafening. Then something happens and they say, well, we think this guy might be a Trump supporter. Now we'll speak out. It's this hypocrisy. You know, it doesn't matter where the violence comes from. We settle differences like we can in 11 days at the ballot box.
That list that you showed in your monologue is shocking, even for somebody like myself, who isn't hypnotized by the fake news industrial complex. That list of incidents should be shocking to all Americans. It tells you one thing, Sean. Violence against those you politically disagree with is okay for one party in America and one party alone, and it's the Democrats. There is no equivalent of Antifa on the right, and I'd just like to see a fraction of the coverage devoted to what the commissioner called the duds that this dud shipped out by the mail. I'd like to see a fraction of that coverage for the president's former daughter-in-law who was sent to hospital because of that white powder device that was sent to her.
Dr. Gorka, one other thing, though. The media they have been waging war to delegitimize this president before he got elected.
Since the beginning.
And the president, if he says fake news, they're fake news. You know what? He's not advocating violence against news people. That is their big claim to fame. It's sad that they are so sanctimonious and narcissistic that they think they're the most important people and can't be called out for their bias. But the bias itself is so evident every day.
Fake news is exactly what we have to call these outlets. When you have these outlets talking about the Russia collusion delusion for 2 years, when you hear them talking about the racism of the president, a man who in one of his first actions pardoned an African-American heavyweight boxer who was prosecuted for racial reasons. He pardoned a black grandmother who was put in prison for being a drug dealer. They peddle fake news, and Sean, I'm going to use that phrase until they act like journalists, and I can guarantee you, so will the president.
All right, last word, Bernie Kerik.
Just one thing I want to touch on. The fake news, CNN, the mainstream media, every single day they legitimize the president's complaints and his frustration and his anger by their own coverage. So it has to change.
You walked off the set, didn't you, of CNN recently?
I did. 2 nights ago, I walked off.
Yeah, why?
Well, you know what? I went on to talk about the event, to talk about the bombs, to give the American public some insight. And they let John Brennan on the air for 10 minutes rant about the president.
Yeah, unbelievable. You can't. This should be a moment we all come together, and there should be one thing we all agree on. But all right, thank you both. When we come back, busy breaking news night, a live update on the mail bomb suspect. Also, more on the abusively biased media blaming the president and conservatives, and talk radio and Fox News for this cowardly, dastardly deed. Joe Concha, Tammy Bruce are next as we continue.
News headquarters. I'm Jackie Ibanez in New York. The FBI says a single fingerprint on one package led to investigators. A Florida man believed to be behind the rash of mail bombs. 56-year-old Cesar Sayoc faces 5 federal charges in connection with 13 mail bombs sent to prominent Democrats. None of the bombs exploded and no one was hurt. Sayoc is described as a loner. He has a criminal record as well as financial problems. Thousands of migrants turning down an offer Friday of benefits from Mexico. The president there announcing what he called the You Are at Home plan. The proposal includes shelter, medical attention, schooling, and jobs, but only if the migrants applied for refugee status and agreed to live in Mexico's 2 southernmost states. The mostly Honduran migrants say their goal is to reach the U.S. I'm Jackie Ibanez. Now back to Hannity. For all your headlines, log on to foxnews.com. Have a great weekend.
All right, so in the midst of the mail bomb scare, the media is proving just how abusively biased they really are. Now, for days, they've been blaming, talk radio, Fox, and, of course, the usual go-to, President Trump.
His natural state of being is to pick the political fight and to not worry about the greater consequences of things.
You think that he knows what he's doing in terms of rhetoric, encouraging people to take actions like the action of the person who sent the bomb?
Yes. Everybody who apparently is in Trump's scope, his focus, are in now danger, critical danger, their lives threatened.
Do these people ever watch their own shows and the vitriolic language they use every day? Now, in a truly surreal moment, fake news CNN's John King went on the air yesterday. He was actually saying with his words, no one is blaming President Trump, even as the lower third banner on his screen was blaming President Trump. You can't make this up. It's true.
No one's blaming the president. Is anyone blaming the president? But the president now wants to make this about him.
Oh, excuse me. Joining us now, Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce, and from the Hill, media reporter Joe Concha. Tammy, I see you laughing and shaking your head. I don't know whether to laugh or cry, but I don't think these people even watch their own shows.
Yeah, look, it's remarkable to watch this unfold. Look, while these are all very distinctively different dynamics, this horrible situation with the man arrested in Florida, right? Violent, national attempts at violent crime, sexual assault in the Judge Kavanaugh case, in the caravan, the plight of people around the world looking for a better life, matched with our national security and need for a strong border. What the media has done in every single one of these, and this, of course, is attached to the American left and some liberals, certainly the Democrat Party, is to use these incredibly important issues against us, to twist them, not report them as they truly exist, and to use them just simply politically. Every single thing they see is through the prism of this dynamic of trying to destroy one man because they simply can't stand the fact that they lost an election. Now, for the American people, as we come up to the midterms, and this is why it's gotten more absurd by the moment, is to not be duped when they hear these things. And this is the problem for regular liberals, the regular base. When there is something, perhaps, that the media needs to then address with the federal national government, perhaps with the president, no one will take them seriously because they have beclowned themselves in addition to harming everyone across the board. All of these issues are, they transcend politics. They're nonpartisan. And yet this is what the media has done, destroying their own industry while at the same time harming every American who cares about violent crime. These are criminals. This guy arrested for the mail bombs, he's a career criminal. They will always find an excuse, as was the man who did the GOP shooting at the baseball diamond. He had a history of domestic violence, assaulting his daughter, his foster daughter. These are people who will find an excuse to exact their violence. Has really ultimately nothing to do with politics and everything to do with violent individuals who, in the midst of 350 million people in this country, it is remarkable that so few people, in fact, act in this manner as they view it through a political prism. We should be proud of this country, proud of every single American, and remember that.
Joe, unfortunately, your job, you get paid to watch a lot of this garbage. I wouldn't want your job, to be very blunt. So you got this idiot on CNN suggesting, well, I think I figured out, why is Robert De Niro on the list? Because on this date, Sean Hannity was critical. I was critical of De Niro for saying he wants to punch the president of the United States in the face and calling him a punk, a dog, a mutt, and words that I can't say on TV. He should have joined me in that criticism. I never told anyone to go after De Niro, nor would I. For weeks on this program, Joe, weeks, I've been saying people need to calm down.
Yeah, De Niro made the F Donald Trump comment on CBS for the Tonys, or he made other comments to Alec Baldwin on ABC. In other words, De Niro's comments were everywhere. Just because you talked about it and criticized him, to connect that dot and say that somehow you were responsible for De Niro receiving one of those explosive devices, that is obviously reckless. And we keep having pundits on cable news playing psychologists and medical experts from afar, psychoanalyzing people like the president when Joe Scarborough said he had early onset dementia. And you're not a doctor, you're not a psychologist, so how do you know these things? But let me get back to that Chiron for a second, Sean, if you don't mind. You know, with John King, and the Chiron is obviously the headlines that you see in your screen on news. One of them was, Trump has no plans to bear any personal responsibility for inciting serial bomber. That assumes a lot, doesn't it? And we've seen this movie before. And what's frustrating for the American people at home that don't trust the media, and many of them don't, is that our media doesn't learn from their mistakes. 2011, Gabby Giffords. She's that horrible shooting in Arizona. Sarah Palin is blamed because she put out flyers that were targeting that district politically. In other words, take it back. The accusations always get a huge stage. Yeah, they always get a huge stage and megaphone. The exoneration barely makes a peep. And later we found out Jared Loughner had no political affiliations, was not incited by Palin. But you didn't hear that part because that's after the fact. So you think we've learned from that situation, and we haven't here. Go ahead, Tammy.
One element of this, especially before they even knew who was going to be arrested, we had no idea who was sending these bombs around. The media, as we see it, whether it's the Capital Gazette or even the Boston Bombers or this situation, they know they've got a window. No matter what the end result will be, they feel that they've got a window to where they can change and create the narrative. And of course, once again, they misunderstand what the American people want. They certainly are disconnected with who we are and how we view this. And that's their abandonment of their job, of the American people, and of the importance of the delivery of real news so that the American people can feel as though that we are able to come to decisions about them.
Fake news is not a call to violence. Frankly,
no, it's not.
It is
a statement of fact.
Dead-on, truthful statement.
Yes.
And all these people, Joe, real quick, were silent when all of these Republican cabinet members and Republican officials were run out of restaurants by mobs. CNN even said you can't say that it's a mob.
Yeah, look, you can't have it both ways and say President Trump's rhetoric is triggering people to incite violence and then ignore Maxine Waters or Cory Booker or Eric Holder or anybody who has said get up in people's faces, run them out of restaurants, tell them they're not welcome, and kick them. You cannot have it both ways, Sean.
Great point.
Yeah, they're intellectually lazy and bitterly partisan, but they claim they're fair, and they're not. All right, thank you both. Tammy, Joe. When we come back, the migrant caravan continues to make its way north through Mexico, headed towards our southern border. Reports that President Trump is contemplating now an executive order that will halt asylum seekers, migrants from ever entering the southern border. Let's get more reaction to today's big breaking news. Joining us now, the best-selling author of The Russian Hoax, #1 New York Times bestseller, The Illicit Scheme to Clear Hillary Clinton and Frame Donald Trump, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, also Fox News investigative reporter, contributor Sarah Carter. She just got back from Guatemala during an exclusive investigation of the caravan. I'm also hearing with the military being set up on the border that their plans, too, are to create barriers of some kind as quickly as possible in case there is some type of rush on the border. Sarah.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Sean. So not only are they going to be concerned about a rush coming across the border, we saw that in Mexico. We've seen it in Guatemala. It's very dangerous. It's an enormous problem. But the military is also there to conduct logistics. Remember, our resources, even though they've grown over the recent years, they're limited. Border Patrol, ICE is overwhelmed. And with this mass of people coming over, it's going to be a potentially big problem. Speaking to sources both in ICE as well as Border Patrol over the last few days, there's a reason why the president wants to initiate or find a way to kind of halt this asylum process. There's been a big problem with credible fear applications where they've been processing people through over the last 8 years, not even questioning some of the circumstances around their credible fear. Pretty much anything from a political prisoner to my husband beats me up to, I even heard a story where my neighbor was a witch. Everybody was processed in. So there's a big problem with that, and the president really needs to take a good look at that.
Nobody can vouch for anybody that is coming across the border. Even if we assume 99% are good people that want a better future, they still have to do it legally. What's interesting to me, Greg Jarrett, is the silence on the left, all Democrats. It's been deafening on this. We know they want to eliminate ICE. They want open borders. They don't want the wall built. We know that part. And they want sanctuary cities and states. But their silence is deafening. Let's talk also legally, though. The president has the authority on every aspect of this to do what he needs to do.
It is not a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 because that bars the military from performing domestic law enforcement functions. That's not what this is. Look at the pictures. This is the threat of an invading force that already, with force, bashed through the Guatemalan fence and are marching to our border. You're right, Sean, to point out we don't know who these people are individually. They may have criminal records. Some of them may be armed. So the president has the absolute legal authority to order troops down there, and they are logistical support, as Sarah pointed out. The president would be derelict in his duty as constitutional authority if he didn't do this. There are the pictures right there going through the fence. There are other pictures that are even more graphic. This is what they are threatening to do to the United States.
Well, I would imagine as part of this, we have a few weeks now before they get up here, Sarah. It would seem to me not only do we don't want to have on one side of the border 14,000 people that would be willing to do what we just saw them do in Mexico, which is knock down any fence that's there and literally rush across. They would be then precipitating a confrontation. In the weeks leading up to it, I've got to believe there's got to be some type of barrier installed if possible.
Well, I think what they're going to try to do is, and I know they're doing this, they're working very closely now with the Mexican government. They're trying to see what can be done on Mexico's part to turn some of these people around. Remember, Sean, I was down there interviewing them. These people, one, had been lied to, some of them. Others were part of this movement because they had been bussed in by groups, by leftist groups in Honduras, and by people who said, look, this is your chance, walk straight ahead. The Americans will let you in. There's no way that they can stop you. They've been trained on what to say to our asylum to get through our asylum process. So something has to be done. This is the reason the Guatemalan government under President Morales, this is the reason why the Mexican government right now, why President Trump is being so tough on them and saying, look, you need to turn these people around. We are not going to let them into our country this way. There is a process to coming into the country legally, and we are not going to allow our border to be run over. Period.
I can, and we know President Trump. I can pretty much guarantee you this is not a Barack Obama red line in the sand. That's right. This caravan will be stopped if Mexico allows them to make it to our southern border. And I actually pray it doesn't happen. I don't want to see anybody hurt here.
No.
But nor do I want to see our country invaded by 14,000 people, none of who have been vetted,
Sean,
and none of who we can vouch for.
The alternative for the president is to shut down the border completely, which would be economically devastating for Mexico and would get their attention to stop this caravan before it gets to our border.
Seems like that's going to happen, right?
The president has the authority to do it. Reagan did it. Bush did it. It can be done again.
Absolutely. Yes. And we got to remember this, Sean. People are already being hurt. A lot of those people in the caravan and the children that are there, some of them are being trafficked. Some of these women have already been trampled. Some of the children have already been trampled in these rushes. They've been putting the women and children in the front of these lines. This is mostly men. So people are already being hurt. Nobody should be supporting this type of organized type of movement. This is a threat both to Central America as well as the United States and to the people that are in these groups.
And the great irony in all of this, if we did have a wall, it would not only create safety for America, but it would be safer for the people that will end up on the other side of the wall. It would be a far safer situation for everybody. All right, guys, thank you.
100%.
When we come back, only 11 days until the midterms. Senator Lindsey Graham campaigning with Senator Dean Heller in the great state of Nevada and around states. For example, new polls show Republican Senator Dean Heller is continuing to gain momentum in Nevada. And Senator Heller joins us from Vegas along with, the man of the moment, Lindsey Graham, who single-handedly, I could say, saved Judge Kavanaugh. Good to see you both. Dean Heller, Senator, I saw you out there. Yeah, he's okay, Lindsey, but, you know, he's doing all right.
I'm a legend in my own mind, if I say so myself.
Listen, I like it better when you're on our side, when you're on my side. But you were great, and I applaud you. By the way. I applaud you for your efforts. Yeah, I was out there. I saw the crowd when I was in Vegas, and I got to see you out there, Senator. And I got to tell you, there seemed a lot of enthusiasm. But the reality is, and I know you were up 7 in one poll, Nevada is tight all the time.
Yeah, Sean, as you well know, Nevada's a purple state, so all my races, this is my 5th statewide race. And, you know, they all seem to come down to the last couple of weeks. We're on the bubble with the wind to our backs, and, you know, that's the way it's working out now. And to have guys like Lindsey come out and campaign for me, I'll tell you, Lindsey gets a bigger crowd than Biden gets here in the state of Nevada, for that matter.
You better not say he gets a bigger crowd than Trump, or else you're both in trouble. I'm warning you right now.
I was at the roulette table.
That's a big crowd.
But Senator Graham, this is really important. I personally think the only state I'm really worried about is a little bit in Florida, but I think Rick Scott will come back. He's up by 2 in the latest poll, and Ron DeSantis for governor. But I think Marsha Blackburn will win Tennessee, I hope. I don't think Claire McCaskill's going back to the Senate. We caught on tape lying to the people of Missouri about who she really is. We see the same in your adjacent state in Kristen Sinema. I mean, it's okay to join the Taliban. I can't imagine the people of Arizona voting for that. Heidi Heitkamp, I think, is a possible pickup in Montana. And if people in Indiana stay away from the Libertarian candidate, Joe Donnelly, he will be saying goodbye in January. Senator Graham, what are the top issues?
Well, I think, one, attitude. He has a great attitude. Dean Heller, to me, just represents a happy warrior. He'll cross party lines when it makes sense for Nevada. I think that the big issue is what you were talking about before is what kind of country are we going to be? Do we respect elections, or do we destroy a conservative candidate, no holes barred, and call that an honorable endeavor? Your pocketbook's an issue, your safety's an issue, but I hope Kavanaugh's an issue. All I can say is if you really were disgusted by what happened to this fine man, destroy him at all costs, you got a chance to send a signal. They'll never stop this until they lose. And I hope if Dean wins, it's over. We're going to hold the Senate. He's running a great race, but it's an attitude as much as anything else about what kind of country we want to be.
And Nevada is very key. Same with Tennessee, I would argue as well. You know, Newt Gingrich has been saying that it's about Kavanaugh, this caravan that is making its way to our southern border. But I would add 2 other things about the mobs confronting Republicans and cabinet members and women and families, which has been pretty despicable. And the last thing is, we have record low unemployment in 14 states, record low unemployment for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, women in the workplace. Senator Heller, I don't want that progress to stop if the Democrats get in power.
Yeah. Well, let me add one more thing to that, Sean, and it's probably the culmination of everything that you just said. But we've noticed for the first time in the first 19, 20 months of the Trump presidency, his numbers are starting to move in Nevada. He stayed pretty consistent, 47, 48% approval. He's above 50% now. When he jumped, and I'm just telling you, within the last 30 days, you're starting to see Trump movement, and that's helping all of us.
Yeah. Senator Graham, putting aside the Senate for a minute, you way back in your past were once a House member. It's a much harder read on the House.
Remember?
And it seems like with all the retirements, you got 45 retirements, history not working with us. The House is a little bit more of an uphill climb. What are your thoughts on the House?
Well, I just left California. We got 14 Republicans, and the party chairman in California, Republican Party chairman, said if the election were held today, we would win 13 of them. There's a post-Kavanaugh bump. If you're a Republican and you're not energized by Kavanaugh and the caravan, you're probably legally dead. So our people have every reason to vote. Kavanaugh reminded us what they would do with power. The caravan reminds us of how weakness invites aggression. And this caravan needs to be stopped, and President Trump is going to stop it. The better we do in the Senate, the better we do in the House. I think we got a good chance of holding the House.
Yeah, it's funny, though, those seats in California, you're right, I've identified 6 on my list of the top 30 in the country that I put up on my website. And Dana Rohrabacher and Duncan Hunter, those are all very important seats. As is your seat, Senator Heller. We wish you the best. The key to a great night
Sean,
on election night is going to be watching you